Hi everyone, it's Thorn. I wanted to come on and make a video about a couple of posts that I've been making on other platforms, namely Instagram and Twitter, about some of the hullabaloo around kind of the TikTok drama, I guess, the alleged TikTok drama. Personally, I think us older folks are just being trolled by Gen Z, which I generally support. So, what have you. But that conversation, that isn't really what this video is about, but that conversation sparked some thoughts about the term baby witch. And these are conversations that I've had with my own witch and magical friends over the months, but I wanted to kind of parse some of those things out here on YouTube for anybody else who'd like to jump into the conversation. So I couldn't recall when I started hearing the term baby witch, but it seems to be pretty ubiquitous at this point. But I have heard two very distinct usages of the term. One of them is by beginners themselves, and the idea is that these are folks who are, a baby witch is somebody who is new to their practice, who is a novice, a newcomer. They're a baby in the sense that they don't know things yet and they're struggling to learn. And usually when this term comes out, it's self-applied and it's meant as an endearment. And I've found lots of people who use the term pretty benignly, even sweetly. It's not meant to be disparaging. But the second use, and I've seen this a lot in the last couple of weeks, is definitely as an insult. And it is older folks, or at least more experienced folks, flinging it to disparage newcomers, particularly newcomers who apparently are they're kind of willfully ignorant. They are not respectful of people who are trying to help them. They think they know everything. They're behaving like a baby in the sense that they're entitled and they're thoughtless and they're incapable of making smart choices. And obviously those two usages are very much in conflict with each other. But I wanted to kind of maybe nuance things a little bit by thinking about, like, obviously I think there are problems with that second definition, just because I don't think it's ever cool to insult people just generally out in the world, right? Like, it's one thing to disagree with people and to pose counter arguments and also to just sort of like shut down, unhealthy and unhelpful conversations. But I don't think that insulting people is ever called for. So that aside, but I think that there might also be some problems with that first usage, and that's what I want to talk about a little, because the term baby witch has always kind of squigged me out a little bit, and it's taken me a while to figure out why. But the conclusion that I've reached is that amongst newcomers to witchcraft, whatever kind of witchcraft we're talking about, and this applies within like occultism and magical communities broadly, but we're talking about witchcraft specifically here. One of the things that happens is, I think because it can be so overwhelming, because there's so many voices, there's so many books, there's so many resources, there's just so much to consume and so much to wade through as a beginner, something that's really common for folks to do, even adults, we're not just talking about, actual children at this point. And I'm really including older teenagers and adults at this point, just in terms of like their cognitive development. One of the things that people do is they're a little bit too quick to relinquish their personal authority and their autonomy. And by that I mean, like, you have thinking adults who, they have adult jobs and adult relationships, and they're out in the world dealing with difficult stuff every day, and they have been for years, and they pick up their first book on witchcraft and suddenly they feel like they need to have their hand held through everything. And a lot of that time it's because we kind of scare them with this idea that they're going to fuck something up, they're going to hurt themselves, this is dangerous, there's a right way to do things, there's a right kind of witchcraft to practice and a right way to do it. That mentality is everywhere online. And it's easy to understand why a beginner, especially one who was very sincere, would be concerned about those things and would look for approval from other people, would look for a level of guidance that they might not look for in other parts of their life. They would maybe just rely on their previous life experiences or their powers of discretion or whatever kind of adult faculties they've developed. People tend to kind of set those things down when they begin practicing magic. And I think the term baby witch encourages that. So it's, this sounds a little dire when I say it, and I don't mean it to sound the way it does, but I think it's true. It's dangerous to set that part of yourself down, no matter what you're learning, but particularly in religious communities, particularly when we're talking about matters of worldview and religion and your relationship with the world and your relationship with other people, especially online. I think we would like to believe that our communities are free from predators and free from people who would take advantage of you and free from, bigotry and all, but that's just not true. It's just impossibly not true. And I think the last few months have shown us that, specifically in the conversations that we've had around racism. But I'm thinking about, we've had community leaders in the past few years who've been, knocked off of pedestals for truly horrific abuses. And I think we're just going to see more of that as our lives become more public and as people are more likely to share things online and speak out about their experiences. So you need your adult faculties around you. Even if you're a beginner, even if you are feeling overwhelmed, I think our best asset as new witches is our own brains and our own experiences. And we have this tendency collectively as a community to talk about baby witches as though they're incapable of thinking, incapable of making their own choices or making their own value judgments. And that simply isn't the case. So I think when we toss that term around wantonly, we're potentially reinforcing those ideas. So if you are a beginner, I want to remind you that you're not a beginner to thinking, and you're not a beginner to reading, and you're not a beginner to being critical. You're not a beginner to evaluating other people and resources and deciding what's best for you. Those are things that you've had practice with in other parts of your life. And those are all critical skills in witchcraft. I would argue that those are the most critical skills, because those are what keeps you safe, and they're also what facilitates your learning in the future. And I think witchcraft practiced well develops all of those things. It doesn't suppress them. Kind of as a community, we go out of our way to not have authority figures who tell us what to do and police how we practice. We're not always super good about it, but at least in terms of our ideals, that's something that's important to us. We believe in autonomy and people having their own power and exerting that power out in the world. And I think when we use the term baby witch, even when we mean it endearingly, sometimes we're kind of inadvertently dismantling that narrative of self-sufficiency and personal power. So I wanted to point that out. That said, I 100% support the idea that people should call themselves whatever the fuck they want to, okay? I would never go out of my way to tell somebody not to call themselves a baby witch. I would say that we need to stop using it as an insult, just because, again, I don't think it's ever okay to insult somebody. But something to be mindful of. I think it's also dismissive of young people who get involved in witchcraft. A lot of folks who come in to occultism, witchcraft, magic, paganism, whatever, do so as young people, not exclusively. I've got folks in my own group who discovered witchcraft in their late 30s and 40s, and I know folks who arrived even later than that, okay? So I don't want to exclude people coming in those older age brackets. But a lot of folks are young. I came in myself as a very young teenager. A lot of my friends did as well. So I understand kind of the shit that we heap on kids. And man, I wish we wouldn't do that, okay? I really think we underestimate we underestimate kids, especially teenagers, which is why kind of my first impulse with the TikTok drama was to assume that we were being trolled, just because I haven't seen anybody point to any original cases of baby witches supposedly hexing the moon or whatever. All I've seen are people freaking out about this thing that is supposedly happening. And I think we all need to be really critical about that. If you can't actually read it for yourself or see it for yourself, then what you're doing is participating in hearsay. And that might be fun and it might be engaging, but it's not a useful way to talk about events in the world and kind of to decide how to spend your energy. You know, I worked in a high school for a number of years as a teacher, and let me tell you what, like, kids are a lot smarter than we give them credit for, and that's true in witch communities too. I was shit on as a teen baby witch, right? They didn't call us that at the time, they just called us teen witches. But, you know, I'd like to not repeat that with folks who are younger than me now. So anyway, just some food for thought about that term. Again, I'm not telling people not to use it or saying that it's like blanket a bad thing, but I do think that calling people babies does have some kind of implications that we should be conscious of if we're using the term. So anyway, everybody have a good day, and that is all. Bye.